Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to Retold, a Harry Potter podcast. This is a show for Potter fans of all sorts to tune in and have fun living in the wizarding world just a little more. My name is Barry, and every week I sit down with a new guest host and we go through the Harry Potter books 2 chapters at a time. We also have some fun segments filled with trivia, lore, movie changes, and our favorite lines. And at the very end of the episode, we have a spoiler section called the Restricted section. This week, I'll be sitting down with another friend of mine, Emily. But Barry, we already know Emily. Not this Emily you don't. This is not the same Emily as from episodes 1 and 8, but an entirely new Emily. And I think you will love her all the same because she is an absolute nerd of so many fandoms, and I mean that in the best way. And she's just lovely. Some behind the scenes info, Emily and I actually recorded a previous episode together, but that is the episode that had the terrible audio and I had to redo it entirely. I didn't want to ask her to come on and talk about the same chapters all over again, but I really wanted her to be on this podcast. And fortunately, she was gracious enough to come back for this final chapter of book 1. Crap of all craps, though, we still experienced some issues recording this one, but it didn't affect the audio at all, so all good there. Anyway, please rate and review the show if you can. That helps me out a lot, and share it with all of your Potter friends. And feel free to reach out to me if you want. You can send me a comment, owl post, or howler by emailing me at theretoldpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can send me a message on Instagram at theretoldpodcast. All right, that's all I got. Enjoy the episode.
See, I know Hufflepuff.
I don't care how big they are! Can we find all this in London?
If you know where to go. Not that you need it, eh, Potter?
Wingardium Leviosa. Wicked.
Last word is Caput Draconis.
This is light.
Thought you ought to know.
All right. Well, hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Retold. This is the final chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the man with 2 faces. And with me today, I have the amazing, the wonderful Emily. Say hi to the people, Emily.
Hello.
What listeners may not know is that Emily has actually done this before. This is her second episode with me. But unfortunately, the first time we recorded, I, being ignorant baby podcaster, messed up the recording process, and the audio just got kind of ruined. And so Emily, gracious enough that she is, has agreed to come back and do this episode as well. So you guys are lucky enough to get to hear her again. Well, hear her for the first time. Yay.
Yay.
I'll say some of the things I did last time. Emily and I, we've known each other for years, all the way back to when we were in 9th grade, and we went to the same little private Christian school together way back when. But I'll let Emily introduce herself. Emily, I have, just as always, you've already done this before, but we'll do it again. I ask people what their fandom ID is, what their house is, Hogwarts house is, what their favorite book is, their favorite movie, and their history with Harry Potter. So take it away.
Cool. Yeah. I am a Slytherin. My favorite part about that is everyone always expects me to be a Hufflepuff. And then I'm like, nope, I never have once gotten Hufflepuff as
I'm not a
quiz
duffer.
answer. I have gotten Slytherin most of the times I've taken the Pottermore quiz, or harrypotter.com, I guess is what it is now. But yeah, Slytherin. My favorite book and movie is Goblet of Fire.
Fantastic choice.
I got into the movies first, which as a bookworm, that feels so wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't read the books until college, but I did take a Harry Potter seminar in college, where we went through all the books and talked about them weekly, and then at the, our final exam was literally, we had to write a fanfic, and read it. What a
wonderful idea. What a wonderful idea for a class. I would have passed so many more classes if that was what the requirement, if I could take those types of things, like a Lord of the Rings one, Harry Potter one, a Naruto one. I don't know, classes like that.
It was so much fun. Well, and also of course, like everyone wanted that class as their freshman seminar. So like when you had to go on to like get your classes, like you had to have that code like copy and pasted and ready to go. Like when it hit the time to get a class, I had like threw it in, and then I worried about the rest of my classes. And that was the first time I had ever signed up for college classes. So I was so new to it and so scared, but I was like,
oh, that's
I
funny.
just need Harry Potter.
This is the first one. I'm gonna make sure it because I imagine that would get taken up pretty quickly. We had one at my campus or at my school. I went to North Georgia, and they had a Tolkien class, and that was kind of similar. But it wasn't just Lord of the Rings. It was like a bunch of extended works too, and stuff like Beowulf and other ones. But anyway, very cool. And another thing I want to. Oh wait, no. Favorite book? Oh, did you say your history with Harry Potter?
Well, and I don't even know when I started watching the movies. I know I was in a theater called Christian Youth Theater where everyone was watching the Harry Potter movies and going to the premieres, and there was a Harry Potter musical parody called Harry Potter Musical that everyone quoted all the time. And I just remember that being like a pinnacle of like middle and high school, and participating in that because that was what everyone was quoting. So I had to know what that was. And that's like as early as I can think of. So I think it was because of all the CYT kids. I got really into the movies.
That's the Harry Potter musical. That's the one with Quirrell and Voldemort, like doing the little head flip, right?
Yeah,
it is that one. Yeah,
they're
two people
like literally like they have like their arms like linked or whatever, and they're on their backs. It's very, very funny.
Yes, listeners, check that out if you haven't gotten to see it. Harry Potter musical.
Darren Criss is Harry Potter, and that was before he was like Darren Criss. Like, so when he like appeared on Glee, we were all like, "What happened to Harry Potter's hair?" Because he had like big curly hair in Harry Potter musical, and then by the time he was Blaine on Glee, it was like a shaved like buzz cut head, and we were like, wait, that's Harry Potter.
You know, years from now when I finally finish the books and the movies, I'm gonna have to review a Harry Potter musical as well, and we'll have to have you on for that one because I don't know who better to have on for that particular one.
I think I definitely know every lyric. I probably can quote most of the show too. I was obsessed with Draco. It's actually a girl. It's so funny. There's like
That's right. Yeah. I've seen her on Instagram.
There's an interview with Tom Felton where people are at like some convention and they're telling him about Harry Potter musical, and they're like, Draco's so funny, and he was like, oh really? And they were like, yeah, she rolls around on the floor a lot. And he goes, she rolls around on the floor a lot? And he goes, she? And it's great.
I love that. Very good. One more thing before we get started. Something that we said in the previous episode that I need people to know that I thought was so funny was that I went to my first ever non-Christian concert with you, and we went to go see Big Time Rush together.
So funny that's your first one.
Yeah, when I was little, when I was in high school, growing up in a Christian household and pretty much only going to like church and school, anything the only music events I ever went to was like Winter Jam or something like that, or the singing in church. And so the first ever concert that wasn't religious at all, although had a religious experience, was Big Time Rush. We went with a group of your friends to go see that. And I do remember, again, I said this last time, but one of the funniest things was I enjoyed it, but they weren't as big as people made them out to be, and at the end of the concert, they had a song called Encore. So, they were going to play it, and they got off the stage, and then we're all packing up, I guess that's it. That's the end of the show. We're packing up our folding chairs and getting out of there. And then they run back out on stage with half the people already gone. Wait. You guys wanted an encore, right? Well, here it is.
That is so fun. I don't know. I was probably just so hyped to be there that I don't even remember that. But I do remember half the people there. Cody Simpson opened for them. So I remember half the people there, or probably more. I know the friends that we went with were only there really for Cody Simpson. So
Yeah, I remember when you told me that, I was shocked. I was like, for Cody over Big Time Rush? And then I discovered who
know.
Cody was, and I was like, he's pretty sick, though. He's nice with it. I like this Cody
Pretty
boy.
Brown Eyes is a slap.
Oh, he's so good. I'm gonna have to play him during my workout today. It's gonna be the next thing I do.
That's a good idea.
Well, anyway, without further ado, let's hop into it. We're gonna start off, listeners, with our quizzitch section. So I was thinking about this earlier today. Each time I update everybody on what the score is, and if in a perfect world, I'm ahead by 1 point right now over my list. Either I'm ahead by one or it's tied. But because mine and your previous episode essentially like doesn't count anymore, and I'm re-recording those chapters with somebody else, I don't know what the score is going to be by the time we get to this point, because I'm going to ask that person questions. They're going to ask me questions. So I don't know. But it still all kind of hangs on this battle right here, even though we don't truthfully, I'll find out when I go and edit all of it, but it's a close race either way. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. You're going to ask me 2 questions. We'll go back and forth one at a time, and we'll see who knows more about Harry Potter, me or the world. So you first.
Okay. I stuck to the chapter for the first one.
Okay.
And I was going to ask, how many points does Slytherin have at the end of the school year?
You know, Emily, I thought about asking you what one of the point totals was. And I was like, that's way too difficult of a question. It's way too unfair. So I'm glad you asked me.
But for you.
Okay.
You claim to be the biggest Harry Potter
that's
fan,
right.
so I have to do the big ones.
Okay. I know it's one or the other, and so I'm going to take a shot. 472.
Yes.
Heck yes. I was like, it's either 462 or 472. I don't remember which one it was, so I'm glad. Yes. Because I remember like the Gryffindors were down by, 160. That's why it's all tied up when Harry gets the points later. And I was like, I remember the Gryffindors it wasn't 302. I think it's 312. I think that's what it was. So anyway, that's the only reason. Anyway, yay. Okay. So what does Harry mistake Dumbledore's glasses for?
Oh, I don't remember at all.
He's looking at him. He wakes up from his being unconscious, and he sees something in front of him, and he wants to grab it. Arms are heavy by his sides.
Is it like the snitch?
Yes, the golden snitch. Very good. 1-1. All right. Next, what do you got for me?
Okay, I know that they didn't hear you do this the first time, but I know that you missed this question twice already, so I wanted to give you a chance to redeem yourself.
Oh, no, don't do this. Don't do this to me.
Oh, no.
Don't do this to me.
Oh my God, how many stairs are there in Hogwarts?
I'm gonna leave this call.
No.
I don't know if I told you this before I answer this. I was in a Harry Potter Quizzitch live show with MuggleCast. Like they're the biggest Harry Potter podcast out there, and they had a giant live show Quizzitch challenge for all their listeners, and there was like 200 something people in it, and I got I was in like 25th place, and the last question was this question. And because I had gotten it wrong so many times, I remembered, and I ended up getting like 60 extra points and jumping all the way to like 20th out of like 220. And I was like, yeah.
Nice.
But right now I can't seem to remember. I'm going to say 142.
You got it.
Yes. This is the greatest day of my life.
I was so scared for you.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, he's got to know it now.
For a second, I was like thinking in the 400s. I was like, isn't the 4? No, but it's not that. Okay.
No, you got it.
My doggy barking. What are you barking at, boy? Oh, well. Yay! Fantastic. Okay, let's see. So my next one for you. I'm going to go with, because I have others. I'm going to say, what type of bean did Dumbledore have as a kid that made him swear off of Bertie Bott's beans?
Vomit one.
A vomit one. I was unfortunate
I've
enough in
had
my
one.
youth. Yes, they're just. So I actually have my Birdie Bots beans right here.
Nice.
And if I had gotten one, I meant to say this, if I had got one of your questions wrong, I would have eaten a bean. But since I didn't get it wrong. But anyway, well, there we go. We each got both our questions right for the day. So yay. Well, I don't know what that's going to do with the point total by the end of it all. Hello, everybody. Just hopping in to let you know the score and to tell you your quizzitch question for the week. The score, as it stands currently, is 21-21. Emily and I both got all of our questions right, so we're all tied up. But Barry, what does that mean? This is the last chapter, so who won? Did you drag us along all these months just to end like this? No, dear listener, I would never do such a thing, and I'm hurt that you would even think such a thing about me. For your information, we will be having a Best of Book 1 episode next week where me and my guest host will duke it out one final time to see who really knows more about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, me or the world. So stay tuned for that one. And while we're at it, I'll also mention that the week after that, we will have a Jeopardy episode where some of the guests from episodes past will come back to compete in a game of Sorcerer's Stone Jeopardy hosted by yours truly. Anyway, on to your quizzitch question. Last week, your question was, what was the first piece that moved in the chess match? And for bonus points, I asked, what move did it make? The answer to those questions were the white pawn, and it moved 2 spaces forward. If you're a chess savant, that may have been a bit obvious. But anyway, if you got that right, fantastic. And if you got it wrong, better luck next time. Next time being right now. Your question for this week is, when Harry lied to Quirrell about what he saw in the mirror, what did he say that he saw? Quirrell asks Harry what he sees in the mirror of Erised, and Harry lies about it. What was that lie? So that's your question. As I said earlier, you can email me your answers at theretoldpodcast@gmail.com, or you can message me on Instagram at theretoldpodcast. Anyway, back to the show. I am going to do like a giant Jeopardy episode. That's like the final wrap up for book 1, season 1 type thing. But
Nice.
Just for fun, again, we're only covering one chapter. So just for fun, I had 2 more questions. These don't count, but if you get them right, fantastic. Okay. Do you know what the name of Nicholas Flamel's wife is?
Oh my gosh. I literally thought of looking this up to ask you, and I didn't look it up. So I can only think of like Harry Potter being like, oh, but what about your friend Nicholas Flamel and his wife? Won't they die? So
But Dumbledore says her name.
Does he really?
He does say her name. He said Nicholas and blank will have enough elixir to put their affairs in order.
Oh, it's to start with a P?
It does start with a P.
Oh my gosh. Is it like, oh my gosh. No. I know it's, I can't believe I knew it started with a P. I do remember him saying this now, but I don't remember her name. Because I remember being like, doesn't this name come up later in the books?
I don't know if it's in the books, but it's definitely mentioned in Fantastic Beasts because he's in the second movie.
Maybe that's what it is. I was like, I swear I've heard this before. That's what it is.
Would you like the answer?
Beasts. Yes, I do.
Perenelle. And all right. Then the other one was, how many points did Gryffindor earn last minute?
Well, I know you said they were just down 160, so it was more than that. Unless, was it 160? Or was it a little bit more? Was it 170?
170. That's correct. Okay. Because of Neville.
I feel like it's just a little bit
more. Because Neville gets that. And then the other one, I know I said 2, but the other one I had was, do you remember what Hagrid promises Harry whenever he sees Harry in the hospital wing? He's like, oh, it's all my fault. I'm never going to do blank again.
Does he say he doesn't say I'll never drink again.
He says he'll never drink again.
Okay. I was like, he doesn't promise that, right?
Yeah, and we all heard that and we're like, no way, Hagrid, don't believe you.
That's why I was like, that's not what he says, right?
All right. Well, without further ado, there's our quizzitch. That's it. We're going to hop into the main bulk of the episode. Listeners, just to remind you, the way it works is we're going to do our retelling of Chapter 17, The Man with Two Faces, where Emily and I will walk through this chapter and just retell what happens, make some comments here and there. And then at the end of the chapter, we will talk about our favorite lines. And spoiler, there's a lot of favorite lines from this chapter. And then we will go to transfiguration section, the things that have changed from book to movie. And then the golden snitch section, which is like deep lore tidbits and things that the average Harry Potter fan or reader may not pick up on or know about. And finally, normally we do a second chapter and we save it for the end of that. But since it's just one chapter today, after that, we're going to do our restricted section. And the restricted section is, again, not necessarily a spoiler-free podcast, but we want to keep the spirit of each book alive. So for big spoilers way on down the road, you're like, Barry, this is the end of the book. What spoilers are there? Well, there's 6 other books, y'all. And so we don't want to spoil things in those books. That's for that section to say whatever we want. So there you go. Emily, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So just some opening thoughts. What I thought right away was, is when I was reading this or after I finished, it wraps up very quickly. Like we have the climax and then the wind down, just like in this last chapter, 22 pages in my book, very, very quickly in a, 309 page book. But surprisingly, it didn't feel rushed to me. It went by quickly, but I thought, that was pretty decent pacing. At least those are my thoughts about it. Did you have any thoughts on the chapter?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it was 3 chapters in one. I feel like there are 3 specific segments of this chapter.
Yeah,
so if they wanted to split it up, they could, but it was all an encompassing ending, so it makes sense to be in one chapter. But yeah, like the final little moment with Quirrell and Voldemort, and and
Dumbledore,
Dumbledore in the hospital, that whole thing, and then the feast,
the Great Hall. Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, especially because the 2 chapters before this are like the two longest chapters in the book. They're both like 7 pages, 28, at least in whatever they're both the longest. Anyway, I was wondering if like maybe JK was told it needs to be 17 chapters. And she was just like, all right, you don't have to say the page length for each stuff. She's like, bam, bam, bam. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's hop right on in. So Harry, having just gone through all the chambers of the previous trials in each room, he finally appears. And the way the last chapter ended is funny. It says, there was already someone there, but it wasn't Snape. It wasn't even Voldemort. And it was funny because, again, not trying to say spoilers on the podcast, last week when I did this episode with John, he goes, it was Quirrell. And I was like, gonna have to edit that out. But yes, it was Quirrell. And so Quirrell's standing there. Stuttering Professor Quirrell. Quirrell's standing there. And Harry says, it's you. And Quirrell's like, yeah, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
I love when you could throw Taylor Swift in there.
Right. There's so many moments you can, as the great philosopher once said. And Harry's like, but I thought it was Snape. Good guess, Harry, but no, it's Quirrell. He tells Harry that Snape actually saved him. And Emily, that's why Snape wanted to referee that next match, because he was trying to protect little old Harry. He wasn't trying to. I love how Quirrell was like, yeah, everybody hated Snape, so it was perfect. They all thought he was just being a douche. They thought he was just trying to hurt Gryffindor's chances.
It's like one of the meanest things that like you hear Quirrell say is like,
yeah, he really trashes him
like an overgrown bat or something.
Yes, he does. He's just a perfect cover-up. Everybody hates him anyway. But Quirrell says it was a waste of time, though, because I'm going to kill you now. And he has this sick move where he like claps his hands and ropes appear around Harry. And he says, by the way, I let the troll in. I'm pretty sick with trolls, which isn't the best brag. He says, I'm actually like rather gifted when it comes to trolls. And it's like, that's not the boast that you think it is, Quirrell. So anyway, Quirrell says, shut up and let me cook. Turns and looks at the mirror. And when he looks at the mirror and turns, the mirror of Erised. Ooh, we remember that. And when he's looking at the mirror,
all of the pieces together in like 1 second.
Yeah. And it's so funny to me because Quirrell, genius that he is, having just gone through all the trials himself and keeping up this charade the whole year, in a very smart move, he goes, how do I figure out what's on the mirror? I'm going to tap it. He just taps around the frame of the mirror.
I love how you're going to get to that. I'll say it then.
Okay. So Harry actually comes up with a pretty good strategy just to distract Quirrell. He goes, I'm just going to talk. Just going to distract him, delay him as long as possible until Daddy Dumbledore can get here. And he goes, but Quirrell, I saw you in the forest. And he's like, yeah, Snape tried to scare me, but he can't scare me. Nobody can. I got something worse on me. I got that thing on me. Literally. Quirrell sees himself giving the stone to Voldy when he looks in the mirror. And I wrote, I love this. Harry says, I thought Snape hated me. Oh, yeah. And Quirrell says, oh, yeah, he hates you. Yeah,
he's
for
like,
sure.
well, yeah.
Yeah, no, don't get it wrong. He does hate you, but he doesn't want you dead.
Even Dumbledore is kind of like, yeah, I mean, he wasn't doing that for you. It was so that he could go back to hating your dad.
Yeah, he hates you. Don't get that wrong. He definitely does, but he doesn't want you dead. And he goes, yeah, well, I heard you crying like a wuss. And that's when he gets Quirrell for a moment. Quirrell kind of freezes and he says, I think he sees some fear on his face. And he says, yeah, Papa was not happy with me then. And Quirrell says that he met Voldy during his travels and they became best buds. But after a while, Voldemort said that he was going to need to keep a closer eye on Quirrell. And Quirrell also admits that he was the one who broke into Gringotts that day. Harry has a brain blast moment about the stone. And what do I mean he has a brain blast moment? Got to remember my notes sometimes. Says Harry's mind was racing. Oh, so he says, what I want more than anything else in the world at this moment is to find the stone before Quirrell does. So if I look in the mirror, I should see myself finding it, which means I'll see where it's hidden. But how can I look without Quirrell realizing what I'm up? Which is a pretty smart moment. He's like, that's what I want the most. So it's going to show me where it's hidden. And then I do like this. Harry tries to sneak out, but he's all tied up and he just falls over, all tied up in his ropes. Let's see. Quirrell says that, and Quirrell just ignores him. And he says that he needs help. And Emily, a voice, answers him. Where's that voice coming from?
It's so funny. Like you said, he just tapped on the mirror. He also said that he got in trouble with Voldemort already. And then he's like, help me. I don't know how to do this. It's like,
Papa, help.
What is Quirrell good for? Everything.
It's funny because he does cry out for help. He does, what does this mirror do? How does it work? Help me, master. So he just, help me, Papa. Yeah. Where is the stone? And the voice tells him to use the boy. And that's Harry, just so y'all know, just for y'all keeping track. Quirrell claps again. He's got the clapper ropes, and the ropes fall off Harry. And Harry goes over and looks at the mirror. What Harry tells Quirrell is that he sees himself winning the cup. He tells a little white lie. He wins the cup for Gryffindor. But what he actually sees is himself holding the stone and putting it in his pocket. And somehow, real life Harry, not just mirror Harry, but real life Harry, feels the stone drop into his pocket. What has it got in its nasty little pocketses? You probably don't get that. That's a Hobbit joke from The Hobbit.
That is one fandom I have not delved into. So
me neither. Me neither. It's so stupid, really. I don't love it.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't go to a Lord of the Rings trivia night the other night. Anyway, so Quirrell pushes Harry out of the way, and Harry actually tries to just walk away. I love it. It says he just tries to just sneak on out, and Quirrell's like, what are you doing? But stop right there, Harry. Papa can hear you, and he can tell that you're a liar. The voice says Harry lied, and Quirrell calls him back, says, tell me the truth now. And Quirrell's like, you in trouble now. Papa wants to talk to you directly. And so he takes his turban off, turns around, and what's on the back of his head? It's Voldemort. Who's that Dark Lord? It's Voldemort. And Harry, there you go. Harry, rightfully so, is terrified. He can't really move, and Voldy says, you did this to me. tells Harry that he can only live off of others. And unicorn blood will sustain him, but the stone could bring him all the way back. So, give me the stone in your pocket. And I don't know, it's crazy that he knew that it was in his pocket. Voldemort talks crap about Harry's parents. Where is that? I have that right here. So Voldemort talks crap about Harry's parents and says, like, yeah, they were scaredy little babies too. They cried for their lives and begged for mercy. And I like this. This is a really good moment to me. This is when Harry actually summons his courage and his bravery, not on account of himself, but for his parents. And he yells at Voldemort, like, you liar. And Voldemort's like, yeah, I was lying. They were pretty cool, but I did kill him anyway. And he says, so give me the stone. Harry makes a break for it, and Voldemort jumps at him, and Quirrell's hands can't seem to hold on to Harry. Something keeps happening. At one point, Quirrell goes to choke Harry out, but he can't keep his hands on Harry's throat. His hands are actually start blistering, and we don't really know why, but they're blistering. They're getting really hot. He's having this awful reaction. So Voldemort says, you know what? Forget it. Just kill him. And Harry, quick thinking boy that he is, says, I'm going to touch your face, and puts his hands right on Quirrell's face and starts burning the crap out of him. And they have a bit of a tussle. Harry's scar starts hurting like crazy. Well, it's been hurting, but it's hurting even worse now. He feels Quirrell get away from him, and then he hears some voices, and then he faints.
I don't know how I didn't get as scared of that as a kid. Like, it's very similar to the Indiana Jones, melting face. Mm-hmm. But yet I don't remember ever being afraid of Harry Potter, but I was terrified of Indiana Jones. I guess Indiana Jones is a little bit more because you actually see the whole face melt.
Yeah.
But when I was rewatching it, I was like, that's kind of scary too.
It is because Quirrell kind of, when he touches his face in the movie, he's already starting to turn to ash, and he backs mm-hmm. up, and then there's this moment where he summons himself one more time, just reaches out and just stumbles forward and just disintegrates right there.
Yeah. I guess since it's not boiling skin, it's a little less scary.
It's like, what is it? Harry killed a guy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
At 11 years old.
Harry did a murder that night. Harry Potter and the murder.
Harry did a murder.
Yeah, you need to lay low for a while. So Harry wakes up, thinks he sees a golden snitch in front of his face, and he wants to catch it, but that ain't no snitch. That's just Dumbledore's glasses. Good afternoon, Harry, says Dumby. Harry says, yo, the stone, Quirrell has it, and he starts to freak out. Dumbledore says, chill, bro. Look at all these snacks. Everybody thinks you're really cool again, and they sent you all this stuff. Let's eat some snacks. And let's see. We find out that Harry has been in the hospital wing for 3 days. Dumbledore tells Harry that he turned right back around when he got to London and showed up just in time to pull Quirrell off of Harry. And I like the props that he gives to Harry here. He says, I arrived in time to prevent Quirrell killing you or taking the stone. Although you were doing very well on your own, I must say. Seems like, yeah, you did pretty good, Harry. Good job. Anyway, says Dumby, glad I got there when I did, because you were looking super dead. And again, good Dumbledore thing. I like that his concern was for Harry more than it was the stone. When he talks about this whole thing, you'll notice that he has more emphasis on Harry and his well-being than on whether Voldemort got the stone. Speaking of, says Dumby, the stone was destroyed. That old thing, don't need to worry about it no more. And I like this interaction. We were talking about it earlier in Quizzitch, but Harry goes, but won't he and his wife die? I also like that when Harry mentions Nicholas Flamel, Dumbledore brightens up. He's like, oh, you know about Nicholas? Yeah, he's my buddy. But he says, you did do the thing properly, didn't you? But he says, yes, they will die. And it says Dumbledore smiled at the look of amazement on Harry's face. And there's a line, it's one of my favorite lines, but I can go ahead and read it here since I have 10. To one as young as you, I'm sure it seems incredible, but to Nicholas and Perenelle, it really is like going to bed after a very, very long day. After all, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. The stone is really not such a wonderful thing. As much money in life as you could want, the two things most human beings would choose above all, The trouble is, humans do have a knack of choosing precisely those things that are worst for them. There's like 6 good pieces of information in that statement. So good. What it made me think of was like, because Harry's just shocked at the fact that they're going to die. And I remember there was one time I had somebody, really old guy, who was a mentor of mine, and we were in a discussion about something and we had a disagreement, and he looks at me and he goes, you know, Barry, you're not wrong. You're just young. And that may seem like patronizing to a lot of people, but I knew this guy genuinely loved me and cared about me. And that sentence, like, that was such a wonderful one-liner. Like, there's so much wisdom in that sentence. And like in here, he's like, it's the theme that we see throughout Harry Potter of death is not the worst thing a person can suffer. They're going to be okay. And I love that moment. Me personally, I love it. Anyway, they sit quietly for a bit. Then Harry, he corrects himself before saying Voldemort. You know, he says, you know who, but Dumbledore says, nope, say the name. So Harry asks if Voldemort will try to come back in other ways. And Dumbledore says, of course, Harry, there's 6 more books. He's definitely going to be coming back, you know? Harry's like, good point.
It's like we know the main character doesn't die because there's other movies or whatever.
Yeah. Harry says he'd like to ask Dumbledore some other questions. Dumbledore says, you can try. I might answer them. Harry asks why Voldemort wanted him dead. And Dumbledore says, rats. Can't answer that one. What's the next one? Then Harry says, okay, why was Quirrell not able to touch me? And Dumbledore says, it's because your mother's protection. And he explains the whole love sacrifice, creating a super powerful spell that Voldemort wouldn't be able to touch him now because of the sacrifice that Harry's mom made for him. It produced this amazing magic that protected him from Voldemort, or people that would try to possess him, that he would possess. And then Harry said, I like this. It says Harry sheds a tear, and it's a really good moment because Dumbledore now became very interested in a bird on the windowsill, which gave Harry time to dry his eyes on the sheet. It's like Dumbledore's like, I'm gonna give you a moment. I know it's pretty touching, pretty cool thing. We also find out that Dumbledore gave the cloak to Harry. He was the one that gave him the cloak, and that Harry's dad and Snape did, in fact, hate each other, but that Harry's dad saved Snape once, and that might be why Snape worked so hard to save Harry this year. Last, Harry asked Dumbledore how he ended up with the stone. Because he's like, I don't know how that got in my pocket. And Dumbledore, he's hyped to answer that one. He's like, I'm glad you asked about, finally, there's one I can answer.
Like, I'm too smart even for myself.
Yes, that's such a little cocky moment from Dumbledore. When he explains it, he's like, I'm glad you asked. It's one of my more brilliant ideas. And between you and me, that's saying something. My brain surprises even me sometimes. I love Dumbledore. So anyway.
Same Dumbledore.
Yeah, my brain definitely surprises me too, but probably for very different reasons. So then Dumbledore's like, all right, enough of that. I'm going to take a risk on one of these birdie bots because, when I was a kid, I had a vomit flavor one. Let's see what I get now. And what does he say, Emily? He takes a birdie bot and then...
He says, alas, earwax.
Rats. Later, Harry begs Pomfrey to let Ron and Hermione in, and after a while she agrees. Harry proceeds to tell them everything that happened in the chamber with Quirrell. Ron has a funny reaction to Dumbledore's one-liner, where he just says, like, yeah, that guy's crazy. Because, what is it? I'm
like trying to remember too, but...
Yeah. Oh, here it is. No, I got it. Okay. That's what I said. But Dumbledore thinks that, what was it? To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. And Ron goes, I always said he was off his rocker, looking quite impressed at how crazy his hero was. So we don't have to edit that out. Yay. So anyway, Harry asked what happened to them. Apparently Ron's injury wasn't too bad after all, because Hermione's able to wake him up, and they got out of there together. And they went to tell Dumby everything that was going on. They were going to send him an owl, but they passed Dumbledore on the way, like, whoa, there you are. And so I love picturing that moment because it said, as we were leaving, he was coming down the stairs like, here, Harry's in there, isn't he? I'm going to go get him. I just love that moment.
Right.
They discuss what all of us.
My brain always like does this thing when I think of how Harry's like, oh, you must have got the owl, and he's like, oh, our paths must have crossed because. And I always think of like Dumbledore like flying in the air as the owl is coming back, which I know is not what happened.
It
but
definitely
my brain
is.
does that every time.
Very much like ships in the night, just you know. Though I had that same thought when I was reading it too. So they discuss what all of us do. Should Dumbledore have allowed all this to happen? You know, because, Ron says, do you think he meant to do it, sending you your father's cloak and everything? Well, Hermione exploded. If he did, I mean to say, that's terrible. You could have been killed. And that's fair. That's a very fair
I think that she's correct. Hermione's usually correct, and this is one of those instances.
And Harry goes, no, I think like Dumbledore was... like he prepared us enough for this. He didn't let us go in blind. You know, he very much like how in anime, they're like, this is my fight. You know, don't nobody come in. Dumbledore was giving me a my fight moment. And Ron goes, yeah, Dumbledore's off his rocker. All right. But again, I always defend this as it's a children's book. You know, if we wouldn't have our story if Dumbledore wasn't a little irresponsible. So anyway, Ron gives Harry some awful news. I love this. He says, listen, you've got to get up for the end of the year feast tomorrow. The points are all in Slytherin, and Slytherin won. Of course, you missed the last Quidditch match. We were steamrolled by Ravenclaw without you, but the food will be good. And again, Ron does this several times in the books where he's like, delivers random thoughts that just shouldn't go together. You know? So he says, he's like trying to comfort Harry, but also say some awful things at the same time. You know, he goes, hey, the feast is tomorrow. Slytherin won. It's because we lost because you weren't there. Ravenclaw destroyed us because you weren't there. But the food will be good, and we want to see you at the feast. So he says that. Harry goes to sleep, and the next day, Madame Pomfrey says he can go to the feast, but before that, he has a visitor. And who is it? It's Hagrid. He takes one look at Harry and he starts crying. He says, it's all my fault and he'll never drink again. Again, none of us believe him when he says that. Harry says, quit your crying. And he drops a Voldy bomb at one point, and that really shocks Hagrid out of his tears. And Hagrid said, because Hagrid says, don't say the name. And Harry doubles down and says Voldy in all caps. He's like, yo.
He says it so confidently because Dumbledore just told him not to be afraid of it. Like he wasn't just afraid of it just a minute ago.
Dumbledore says I can say it. He's higher up than you, Hagrid. But he all caps Voldy bomb. I beat him twice. I can say the name. He offers Hagrid a chocolate frog, and Hagrid says that he actually has a present for Harry as well. And it's a photo album of a bunch of pictures of his parents. And it's a really good Hagrid moment, you know, in this book where Hagrid kind of screws up a lot. This is a great Hagrid moment where, you know, he says he like wrote a bunch of letters to people. He's like, yesterday was my off day. You know, instead of firing me, Dumbledore just gave me an off day, said, hey, you need to think about some things. And
doesn't he say he probably should have fired me?
Yeah, that's what he says. And he said, rather than take it easy, I sent out all these letters to people, all your parents' old school friends, asking for some photos. And I like this. Harry couldn't speak, but Hagrid understood. Oh. Later, Harry goes to the feast and sits with Ron and Hermione, and the whole place is decked out in Slytherin merch because they're about to win the House Cup. But just before they do, Dumbledore stands up, and he says the words wheezing waffle. He says, and I must trouble you with an old man's wheezing waffle before we sink our teeth into our delicious feast. I've never heard that before. Dumbledore says, it's time to award the House Cup, and he gives a rundown of the points. We were talking about this in an earlier episode. Was Gryffindor in last? The answer is yes, they were in last because it didn't specify after they lost 150 points. He says that Gryffindor's in fourth with 312, Hufflepuff in third with 352, Ravenclaw in second with 426, and Slytherin is in first with 472 points. So they're 160 points ahead of Gryffindor. Now, I was thinking about this. I was like, so if Harry hadn't lost those 150 points, I mean, they still would have been 10 points behind, but they also would have gotten more points from the Quidditch game. So then I was like, they probably would have won the House Cup. But that all train of thought led me to, what happens in case of a tie? Like, what do they do if two of the houses are tied? Do they have a duel? Do
they have a duel?
Like, I don't know. What do they pop quiz? I don't know. Something to ask about. Headcanon stuff. I need fanfic. So the Slytherins cheer and Dumbledore goes, "Yep, good job, y'all, but not so fast." Says recent events must be taken into account. And this is like the big memed thing that you see all the time of like Dumbledore's like, you get some points and you get some points. But this is like chump charity at the end of Mario Party. If you've ever played Mario Party.
Oh my gosh, this is the worst part of the game.
In the last few turns, like in Mario Party 8, it was called Chump Charity, but they call it the home stretch in the new Mario Party Jamboree. But whatever it is, where point values are escalated, they give something nice to the person in last. This is Chump Charity Mario Party. He gives 50 points to Ron for the best played game of chess Hogwarts has seen these many years. Percy's hype about that. I like that. Percy's like, that's my brother. That's my brother. I love him. He's mine. He also gives 50 points to Hermione. She blushes and puts her face. It says when she puts her face in her arms, Harry was pretty sure she burst into tears. And I really, really love both her and Ron's reactions to this, because they hadn't won the cup at this point, but both of them are still so touched by the fact that they got these points. And it just shows that they cared more about doing good and the honor of receiving doing good than the honor of winning. And I thought that was a very, very good character moment for both of them. Anyway, the crowd is going crazy. And Dumbledore's like, y'all like that? Well, there's more where that came from. Bam, Harry, you get 60 points for defeating evil incarnate. So it's all tied up now. That's crazy. That's a crazy come from behind win, or come from behind tie for the House Cup. Nobody saw this coming. It's a tie. It's a tie. No, wait. It's Neville Longbottom with the steel chair. Dumbledore comes in, gives 10 points to Neville, and the kids dogpile Neville. And I love that. So 10 points because he stood up to his friends.
I love his little face in the movie where he's just like dumbfounded and just like, and everyone's like on top of him and he's just like.
That's a good one. Everyone not a Slytherin is cheering, even the Ravenclaws and the Hufflepuffs, because Slytherin lost. They're like, finally, somebody beat these boons. Boons? Goons. Dumbledore looks at the Slytherin decorations and is like, let's change this crap. And he claps his hand, and now it's a Gryffindor party. Snape and McGonagall reluctantly shake hands, and Harry says, it's the best night ever. Where is it? He says, it was the best evening of Harry's life, better than winning at Quidditch or Christmas or knocking out mountain trolls. He would never, ever forget tonight. Aw, tonight. But later, they get their test scores and they all pass, even the people they thought that wouldn't. So Hogwarts isn't really testing these kids. Hermione did the best of all the first years, and now it's time to go home. There's a line about them riding in the boats, and I think you and I discussed this in the chapter that we did before that the listeners weren't able to listen to. But I mentioned how first years as a graduation, when they first show up, they ride the boats. And J.K. Rowling confirmed that in the graduation ceremony, seventh years when they leave, they ride back in the boats, because other time it's the carriages. Oh. Well, she hadn't come up with that in this yet, because it says that they rode the boats back in this one. Like, I actually caught the line. It says, Hagrid was there to take them down to the fleet of boats that sailed across the lake. Now, it doesn't say they sailed on them, but that's heavily implied that they got in those boats.
It's very on track for J.K. Rowling to come out with something years later to be like, oh, well, this was always the thing. And it's like, I don't think it was, though.
I planned it all along. But anyway, So they all get on the Hogwarts Express and they eat some snackies all the way back to London. Ron invites Harry over at some point during the summer. He's like, come on over to my crib. Harry says, I'd love to. He probably will. Lots of people say bye to Harry. Ron says, hey, you're still famous. And Harry's like, not where I'm going, bro. It's about to suck. They see Mrs. Weasley and Jenny. And Jenny is more hyped to see Harry than she is Ron. She's like, there he is. And not pointing at you, Ron. Harry thanks Mrs. Weasley for all the gifts that she gave him at Christmas. And I'm like, that's a late thank you. You could have sent a card, my guy.
Right.
But
you do
Vernon
have an owl.
That's right. Vernon shows up, tells Harry to hurry up and get on out of there. Harry says bye to Ron and Hermione, and they're worried about him after seeing Uncle Vernon. But to their surprise, Harry, the little rascal, is smiling. They say, what's up? And he's like, don't you worry about my summer. They don't know that I'm not allowed to use magic outside of school. The end. And that's the end of the last chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Yay. So with that, we're going to hop into our sections at the end now, our for funsy stuff, favorite lines. Emily, how about you say one and I'll say another, and we'll just keep going till we both run out.
Sure.
All right, what you got?
Dumbledore has so many good ones in this one. But my favorite of the one that you like picked apart like 6 different things, my favorite part of that is the after all, to the well-organized mind, death is the next great adventure, or I think that's what it is. Yes. And it also reminds me, it's funny, when we did our last one, we talked about how there were so many lines that reminded us of other British books.
Mm-hmm.
And this one reminds me of Peter Pan, the death would be an awfully great adventure. It's another little British literature link, and I love it. And I like how that theme pops up again. And it's honestly, as like these popping up in kids' books too, it's like almost like comforting.
Yeah, treating them a little more grown up, being a little more serious.
But I don't know. I love that it reminds me of Peter Pan, and I love the comfort of that line.
Yeah. Peter Pan's a great story. I remember I went to go see the movie Pan when that came out. Like nothing ever happened with it. I think people forgot about it. Do you know what I'm talking about? The movie Pan?
Maybe?
It was
I'm a huge Peter Pan fan, so maybe I literally just forgot about it.
It was like a prequel to Peter Pan, but live action. And I think I think maybe Jude Law played Hook. I'm not sure. But anyway, I went to go see that in theaters by myself. I remember it was like the first movie I ever went to see by myself. And I was so ticked off that none of my friends wanted to go see it with me. I was such a pouty little boy. And then sitting in the theater, I was like, you know what? I'm going to see it because it's about to go out of theaters and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to finally see a movie by myself.
Good for you.
Thankfully, I had a friend show up 10 minutes in like, hey, you baby, I'm here.
That's so funny.
My favorite line, one of them, Voldemort saying, see what I've become, mere shadow and vapor. I have only form when I can share another's body, but there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Which, again, if you're talking about what evil can do, just when you just let it into your heart and mind and what it can, like, it's very good, again, very mature lesson, especially in a kid's book. What's your next one?
My next one is my most quoted one. And anytime anyone or I says alas, I always have to answer it with earwax.
Earwax. Very good. Let's see. I got one. What happened down in the dungeons between you and Professor Quirrell is a complete secret. So naturally, the whole school knows. I love that so much. One, yes. And I do like the follow-up, too, where he says, I believe your friends, Misters Fred and George Weasley, were responsible for trying to send you a toilet seat. Again, call back to that chapter.
I had a friend growing up. Her name was Mackenzie, and she was a huge Harry Potter fan. Mm-hmm. And she had I know this toilet seat is because of a different reason, but thinking of it as a gift, her toilet seat said Ministry of Magic, like when you opened it, because of like how you could get it.
Yeah.
But I just think about the fact that she also got it as a gift. It was like a Christmas gift, I think, for her. So even though that is a nod towards an actual Ministry of Magic like thing, it links to that, and I think it's funny.
That's still pretty cool. You got another one?
I have a line that I really like that they changed for the movie a little bit from the book. In the book, it says it takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but just as much to stand up to your friends. And they changed it in the movie to be it takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends. And I think that it is scarier to stand up to your friends than your enemies because you're more afraid of losing them. And so I like that they changed that for the movie.
Yeah, especially for somebody like Neville who doesn't really have friends. So it's like the few friends that he does have, the few ones that do care about him. Yeah, it's probably much more terrifying for him to risk his friendship with his like only 3 friends versus, to stand up to Malfoy. Yeah,
he already feels like he has to prove himself, and he puts that on the line to try to protect them.
2 more on one page for me was, fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself, as well as the truth. It's a beautiful and terrible thing and should therefore be treated with great caution. Again, I just have a bunch, so I'm not even going to bother explaining. I'm just going to read through. Do you have any more?
No.
Okay. I'm just going to blast through these because like I said, I have a few more.
There are so many good ones in this one.
And I love this when he's talking about the love protection upon Harry. He says, to have been loved so deeply, even though the person who loved us is gone, will give us some protection forever. It is in your very skin. And again, to have been loved that much, it's something that always sticks with you. It leaves a great impression. I like the line about Dumbledore looking away when Harry was crying. And this one, when Harry tells Ron and Hermione the story of what happened in the dungeon, Ron and Hermione were a very good audience. They gasped in all the right places.
That's actually one of my favorite parts of I don't know why I didn't say that. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole book because that's like what you want in your friends, right? So like that just like shows that they're like the best of friends. Every time I read that line, I like get giddy about it because it's so sweet. It's the friendship that you want.
I'm somebody who like weekly will call my friends at least, or like bi-weekly if I don't see them, like whatever. And throughout the week, I amass some stories and I will tell them the stories. And when it gets to like the second half of the group, I think, okay, they should gasp at this point. I should accentuate this. Like I'm performing for them now to make the story even funnier.
Right.
Let's see. And then I have another one here. Oh, the one of Harry couldn't speak, but Hagrid understood. And then my last favorite line was, it seemed as though life would be back to normal next year, or as normal as it ever was at Hogwarts, which again, it's not that normal, but I did like the call out to that. Anyway, time for our transfiguration section. So hopping on over here. Let's see, I've made a note. So, and again, the transfiguration section is things that have changed from book to movie. And so, okay, so there's this line in the book, Quirrell says this, but in the movie, Voldemort says this. There is no good and evil. There is only power in those too weak to seek it. In the book, Quirrell says that, but in the movie, it's when Voldemort's trying to seduce Harry to the dark side. He says that line to himself. Also, Professor Quirrell crumbles and turns into dust in the movie. We kind of talked about that already. In the book, he blisters and his skin gets real hot instead. There's also no scene with Hagrid in the hospital. So when Harry's chilling in the hospital, Hagrid doesn't show up, but he still gives him the photo album, but he gives it to him at the train station, the Hogsmeade train station, rather than in the hospital wing. And then finally, the last transfiguration one for this was there's no final King's Cross scene. When Harry shows up and says, and is greeted by the Dursleys and sees Mrs. Weasley and all them. Instead, it ends at Hogsmeade Station. So both end at the train, but one's at Hogsmeade. Of all of those, I think the one that I would have liked to have seen a little more for it to have been kept was the scene with Hagrid in the hospital. I would have liked to have seen that. It accomplishes the same thing, but more time with Hagrid and Harry and him interacting would have been sweet as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to change the final one because the ending of the first movie is just iconic to me with the music blasting. And
I'm
then
literally hearing the
back.
music. That's like what's in my head right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going home. Not really. I love it. Okay. Then our golden snitch section. And this is little deep lore and tidbit things that you might not have known. So I have, let's see, on 280. Wow. Very first page of the chapter. Oh, so when he sees Quirrell, he says that he's like, Snape tried to kill me, not you. And Quirrell goes, no, dear boy, I tried to kill you. You know, in the movie, you can actually see, in that scene at the Quidditch match, if you go back and watch it later, when Hermione has her binoculars on and she zooms in and looks at Snape muttering the incantation, you can see Professor Quirrell right over his shoulder, also looking up and muttering.
So do you have to go back to look at that? Because I feel like I remember there being a flashback after you knew that and you could see Quirrell doing it, or I'm like, but I was like, because I vividly remember seeing Quirrell also doing it at the same time as Snape. But I'm like, maybe I just saw that later watching it, knowing, and looked for it.
Yeah, there's no flashback. It's just that scene. And so they blatantly put it there of Quirrell just over his shoulder, just
cool.
Muttering away.
I love that. I also love that I found that later. I guess I probably did that as a kid where I was like looking to see like if Quirrell was muttering.
Yeah, because you got into your mind at that point. You're like, he's the bad guy. He's definitely saying something.
This is definitely the movie I've seen the most because there's been so many times where I was like, I'm going to start a Harry Potter marathon and then make it to like Goblet of Fire and then stop.
Done.
So, but I always will start it. So it always starts. It's the same as like Star Wars when I try to watch all the Star Wars and I've seen Phantom Menace so many times, but don't make it all the way through.
Duel of the Fates is one of the best soundtracks ever. I love it so much. But anyway, going on to the next one. So your favorite line, alas, earwax. Did you know that Alas Earwax is actually a real life wizard rock band?
No way.
So there are fan bands that have been made that do wizard rock, just, fan songs based on like wizard things. And one of the more famous ones is Alas Earwax. They have their most famous song is There's a Face on the Back of My Head. They also have an album called Wands Don't Kill People, ... I Do. That's the name of that album. And then they also made a song with the guy who hosts the Potterless podcast called Enter Thickness, because there's a character in the later books whose name is Pious Thickness. And the guy who hosts Potterless was like, that's a crazy name, Thickness. And they made a song about that guy. Alas Earwax, real life wizard rock band. You can check them out, listen to them. I don't know if I tried to look them up on Spotify. I didn't see, but they are on like Instagram and you can see that, or the internet. You can find them there. But anyway, and then the other one I have this section about Professor Quirrell. So I thought about saying this when he first appeared, but obviously since it's his first time appearing, I'm not going to say it, but there's an article about him on the Harry Potter website, harrypotter.com, that J.K. Rowling wrote. And so let's see. I will read just a little bit of it. So Quirrell set out deliberately to find whatever remained of the Dark Wizard. Talking about Voldemort. He set out once he finished school in pursuit of Voldemort, partly out of curiosity, partly out of that unacknowledged desire for importance. At the very least, Quirrell fantasized that he could be the man who tracked Voldemort down, but at best might learn skills from Voldemort that would ensure he was never laughed at again. Though Hagrid was correct in saying that Quirrell has a brilliant mind, the Hogwarts teacher was both naive and arrogant in thinking that he would be able to control an encounter with Voldemort, even in the Dark Wizard's weakened state. When Voldemort realized that the young man had a position at Hogwarts, he took immediate possession of Quirrell, who was incapable of resisting. While Quirrell did not lose his soul, he became completely subjugated to Voldemort, who caused a frightful mutation of Quirrell's body. And then we know about the rest of it from there. And then at the very end, it says, I saw Quirrell as a gifted but delicate boy who would probably have been teased for his timidity and nerves during his school life. Feeling inadequate and wishing to prove himself, he developed an initially theoretical interest in the dark arts. Like many people who feel themselves to be insignificant, even laughable, Quirrell had a latent desire to make the world sit up and notice him. So there you go. Again, just showing his earlier roots when he first was he was laughed at and teased a lot as a boy at Hogwarts, wanted to become something significant. He left. He went out in search of Voldemort. Voldemort got the better of him.
Typical villain origin story.
Yeah, it does. It made me, I didn't know that Quirrell was that maniacal or evil in that way. I thought he was going out to defeat Voldemort, but this says that he was going out to
actually
learn from him. Yeah. There's also a cool note that says Quirinius was a Roman god about whom there is not much information, although he's commonly associated with war, a clue that Quirrell is not quite as meek as he appears. And Quirrell, which is so nearly squirrel, small, cute, and harmless, also suggested quiver, a nod to the character's innate nervousness. So there you go. Some little fun facts about Professor Quirrell. Mm-hmm. And then my last golden snitch, I saw it was a very Tolkien idea. So for any of our Lord of the Rings fans out there listening, Voldemort makes it clear that, he's so weak now that all he can do is really take control of people and corrupt them if they let him into their hearts, and he can manipulate them. And there's this cool idea in Tolkien philosophy. He created this giant world, giant mythos and Lord of the Rings and all this stuff, Middle-earth. One of his philosophical ideas behind his world is that evil cannot create anything. It can only corrupt that which already exists. And people oftentimes talk about how pretty much all fantasy today borrows something from Tolkien. And there are many, many elements in Harry Potter that definitely borrow from Tolkien. But that I thought was an interesting one as well. So anyway, with all that, finishing up our golden snitches, we're heading now to our restricted section. So for all those who do not wish to, well, first I want to say, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. Emily, is there anything you want to plug?
If you want to see my face, you can go to my Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. It's just Emily Christine Peterson, my full name. And I'm into a lot of fandoms, so you'll probably see a lot of fandoms on there. Heck
yeah. Emily posts a lot of funny stuff on her Instagram that I usually save and show to my wife later.
I love that.
And so, yeah, glad we can have Emily here. Listeners, glad you get to hear her finally. But thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us on this journey through book 1. If you don't want spoilers, go ahead and get on out now. But if you don't mind spoilers, you're here in this restricted section, 3rd floor corridor. Let's do it. So do you have anything to talk about in the restricted section, or do you want me to just share my list?
You just go off and
I'll just go off, Queen.
Yeah, you start cooking.
That's right. So the first one, we mentioned it before, but it mentioned that Quirrell called Snape a bat. And there is a fan theory that Snape is an animagus and that he turns into a bat. Oh. I can't remember if that was confirmed to not be true in the new Harry Potter book, the one that looks like a collection of all of J.K. Rowling's writings or not. I feel like I heard a note about it. But whether it is or not, it's something that's big in the fandom because, like in the 7th book, when he flees from the castle, Harry says he looks just like a bat as he's flying away.
That's very Dracula sounding.
Yeah. Definitely intentional. That's definitely an intentional connection I feel like we're supposed to make.
Another British literature.
Right. And then Voldemort says that Harry's dad put up a fight against him. And listen, what James did whenever you see the memory is a very brave thing. He takes on Voldemort without his wand. but I would not call it a fight. Like, I'm trying to remember the exact line Voldemort says. He says that your parents were very brave. I killed your father first, and he put up a courageous fight. He didn't put up a fight. It was not a fight in that moment. Again, I hate to even say that because it is courageous what James did and what any father should do, but not a fight. And then Neville winning points last minute, because it was Ron won points, Hermione won points, Harry won the most points, but Neville squeaking in there and winning just a little bit. I feel like that could be good foreshadowing of later. Neville destroys one of the Horcruxes. Like, it's those four who are destroying Horcrux. Like, Dumbledore destroyed one, but it's those four really who destroyed it. And Neville sneaking in at the last moment in book 7 to destroy Nagini.
Full circle. Love that.
I like that. And when nobody's expecting it, Neville pops in and saves the day.
Neville surprised us all in many ways.
He does. That's right, he did. Glow up king.
Yeah.
Another restricted section comment or note I have is that there's a gift. The gift that Dumbledore receives from Harry when in his will is a golden snitch. And so when Harry's looking at Dumbledore, like when he's first waking up, it says he saw what he thought was a golden snitch. And that was just on the heels of Harry having heard voices. And what we can imagine was probably the voices of his mom and dad, which he often hears back. So the voices of the dead, and then the golden snitch. And then later when Harry gets the golden snitch from Dumbledore, Dumbledore's dead. And inside that golden snitch is the stone that brings back the resurrection stone. So I don't know. That's probably a very tinfoily loose connection, but I thought there's some similarity there.
It counts. Yeah.
And then finally, this last one here, Dumbledore said that that Snape saved Harry so he could go back to hating Harry's dad. I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe it was in this moment, but we also know that by and large, Snape saves Harry because he loves Lily.
He loves Lily, yeah.
Like that's the whole line of always.
I was like, can't we focus on the fact that he was so in love with Lily and Harry's eyes are Lily's eyes? And so, I know every time I hear, now you can go back to hating your father's memory in peace or whatever. And I'm like, but then when he looks at Harry, he sees Lily's eyes. So the love is always going to be there.
Yeah. Maybe it's, he did owe James, even though we find out that what James saved him from was a prank that his group pulled on Snape, because it was Sirius told Snape that he should go check out where Moody was, or Mooney, Lupin, whenever he was in werewolf form. And then James was like, no, you can't freaking do that. But what I think it could be said is, so rather than Snape just peacefully going back to hating Harry's memory, or hating his dad's memory, he's going back to loving Lily. He's like, I did this one for James. I saved Harry this one time for James, but the rest will be for Lily. That's probably the only out you could get to make it work the same way.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But anyway, that's all the restricted section stuff I got. Do you have anything?
Not really. I feel like this chapter just like wraps everything up nicely. I guess there's things I get excited for, but I mean, you pretty much mentioned those links. So yeah.
Very good. Well, that wraps it. We did it. Podcasting for a whole book. We made it through. People said it couldn't be done, but we did it.
Honored to be on your season finale.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining me, Emily. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. This was fantastic. I had a wonderful time doing this. Like I said, we'll do a follow-up like Jeopardy episode and maybe a fan mail episode. Again, I'm expecting this to be the most famous Harry Potter podcast that's ever existed, of course.
Of course.
But on the very small chance that it's not, and nobody writes in any emails, then I won't do that. But if you guys want to write in anything for next week's episode, I'll answer questions. And
I'm sure you'll be flooded with emails as if you're getting a million Hogwarts letters.
That's right. I'm like Harry. I want to hear everybody's favorite lines. That's something I want to ask people for. What are your favorite lines throughout the book, since that's what we always go through? But anyway, that's all I got. Emily, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming back a second time to do this. This was fantastic.
Fun. I'm glad I got to come back a second time.
Yay. Fun. All right. Well, that's all I got. Everybody have a wonderful week. Goodbye.
Bye.
And there you have it. Congratulations, everybody. We made it through an entire podcast covering Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Yay! So what's next? Glad you asked. Well, if you heard the quizzitch portion of the show, I said it there, but I'll say it again in case you forgot or, you skipped that part. But before we move on to book 2, The Chamber of Secrets, we will have 2 more episodes dedicated to book 1. Next week will be an episode where we discuss the best of book 1, and we will talk about our favorite lines, characters, transfigurations, and other things from all of book 1. We will also be wrapping up the season's quizzitch challenge, and we will see who knows more about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, me or the world. Then the following week, we will have a Jeopardy episode where I will host a giant game of Book 1 Jeopardy with some old guests. I love trivia, if you couldn't tell. And then we'll move on to book 2. And I may take an off week between that Jeopardy episode and the starting coverage of book 2. Not sure, but I'll let you know when we get to Jeopardy. Anyway, thank you so much to everybody for listening to me and all my guests talk about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for all of these different podcasts. I'm so grateful to have listeners of this show and to share my love of this series with all of you. It's really cool to go online and I can look at the stats and see there's people all over the world that listen to this, in so many different countries. So thank you so much for tuning in, for leaving the show a review. You guys are wonderful. You're all the best, and I can't thank you enough. Speaking of, if you can, please rate the show and share it with your Potter friends. I think that I would love to get to 50 reviews on Spotify. That's my little personal goal right now. Shouldn't be too hard because this will obviously be a super famous podcast and all that good stuff. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks again, everybody, and bye. Thank you for listening to Retold. Artwork for this podcast was created by Rachel Ortlip. Music was created by Taylor Jarvis. And the Retold podcast is produced by me. That's right, I made this.